March 3rd, 2015, we both retired from Dallas Parks. But my mother told me, you are a rumbly. Rumblies do not retire. We rewire. So what are you gonna do now? Believe it or not, the minute I left the City of Dallas Parks Department, I went to work for the City of Louisville Parks. After serving there for about 7 months, because I reside in Forney, driving from Forney to Louisville was kind of a drag on my happiness. I thought I could do it, but it was just too much driving, too much on the road. George Bush Toll Road was eating up my paycheck. So I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm not happy driving home for an hour and a half. So I went to work for the city of Rowlett for 2.5 years. And then I went to work for C.C. Young Senior Living in Dallas, over near White Rock Lake. I was their wellness coordinator over all the exercise classes, because I have taught jazzercise for 42 years. So I am a big advocate of exercise, because I believe exercise is one of the best things you can do for you. I told my mom at the tradition they have sit and get fit on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I said, don't you miss sit and get fit, because if you sit, you're going to get fit, and if you sit and don't get fit, you're going to be sitting for the rest of your life, and that's not good. So anyhow, but I did finally retire last April. Now, when I worked for the Dallas Park System, I was known as the parody queen. When someone would retire from Dallas Parks, I was always asked to write a parody in their honor. So when I retired last April, guess what? I wrote my own parody. And it's to the song I Will Survive. And it goes like this. At first, I was afraid. I was petrified. Kept thinking, what will I do now since I've retired? Now I spent so many nights thinking, did I quit too soon? Now I worry, and this is why I croon. But I am sure there is a place where I can go with people to enjoy the same space. I like jazzercise and more. All I need is an open door where I can play and feel young like before. I'm gonna go right down the street to maybe a senior center where others meet. Old age, you're the one who tried to hurt me with some pain. I'm not gonna crumble. No, I'm too active and too vain. No, not I. I will survive. As long as I know how to play, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live. I've got so much more to give. I will survive. I will survive. It took all my strength not to fall apart, trying to continue every day to work my heart. I spent so many nights feeling sorry for myself, how I cried. But now I hold my head up high, 'cause you see me, somebody new. I'm now that boomer who is looking for something to do. I want travel, games, and more. Something to help ease my bore. I've got money. I'm ready to walk out my door. But all I want now is to entertain. Please help me now. I need something to help me work my brain. I won't crumble. I won't lay down and die. I will survive, and guess what? I have survived. So see, you just got to keep moving and moving and moving. Now, how many of you know who Julie Andrews is? Oh, yes. We know her mostly for her part in the musical The Sound of Music. She played the part of Maria. Well, guess what? She wrote a parody about one of the songs in that musical, and the song is, "These Are a Few of My Favorite Things." Now, see how many of these things in this song you might relate to as we get older. Now, after she sang this song, she sang it first at the National Convention of the AARP. They gave her a 5-minute standing ovation. Don't feel obligated. You can stay seated. But here's her parody, and it goes like this. Botox and nose drops and needles for knitting, walkers and handrails and new dental fittings, bundles of magazines tied up in strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Cadillacs and cataracts, hearing aids and glasses, Polident and Fixodent and false teeth in glasses, pacemakers, golf carts, and porches with swings. These are a few of my favorite things. When the pipes leak, when the bones creak, when the knees go bad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad. Hot tea and crumpets and corn pads for bunions. No spicy hot food or food cooked with onions. Bathrobes and heating pads, hot meals they bring. These are a few of my favorite things. Back pain, confused brains, and no need for sinning. Thin bones and fractures and hair that is thinning. And we won't mention our short, shrunken frames when we remember our favorite things. When the joints ache, when the hips break, when the eyes grow dim, then I remember the great life I had, and then I don't feel so bad. Thank you. So, let me just say, turning a year older, guess what? We have so many things to look forward to. Like getting tired from just standing. Like getting achy from driving long distances. Skin growths. Wrinkles. Forgetting passwords. Insomnia. Age spots. Colonoscopies. And the ability to remove our own teeth. Loss of hair. Loss of hearing. Sunglasses with side panels. Eating dinner at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Osteoporosis. Heart disease. Incontinence. Driving 15 miles below the speed limit. Leaving your turn signal on for miles and miles and miles. Being able to nap in an upright position. Senior discounts. Hair growth on your nose, chin, and ears. A fascination with the Weather Channel. And let's not forget, Wheel of Fortune! Going to bed at dusk. Waking up in the middle of the night. Getting shorter. And an all-around excuse for just sometimes not even making sense. Can you relate to any of those? Yes. Well, how many of you have ever wished or dreamed of appearing in the Guinness Book of World Records? Now, I've always wanted to be in the Guinness Book of World Records for something. I don't know what, but I've always wanted to be in it. Well, I was reading about 3 people who continue to percolate. That's our word today, percolate. These 3 people have continued to percolate in their old age. The first person, he's 105 years old. He's the oldest competitive sprinter in the world. He ran a 100-meter dash in 42.2 seconds. His name is Toru Yamanaku. He's a Japanese centurion known as the oldest competitive sprinter in the world. 96 years young, Joanna Quas. She's a gymnast, the oldest gymnast in the world. Just watching her on the parallel bars makes my core hurt. She believes there's no reason people should not be able to tuck and to tumble and to have a fitness regimen. She walks every day, she swims every day, and she practices gymnastics 3 times a week. 96 years old, still doing flips, tumbles, somersaults, back bends. How many of you have ever struggled to do 1 push-up? There's a gentleman by the name of Fred Winter. When he turned 70 years old, he decided he would do 100 push-ups a day. Now he is 99 years old. He describes himself as a health nut, and he watches his diet every day. And he didn't decide to do 100 push-ups every day until he was 70. So he still does 100 push-ups a day. So my program today is titled, You're Never Too Old to Rock and Roll. Now we're going to take a look, first of all, at, I mentioned some things that we have to look forward to as we get older. We're going to talk about a few things specifically. Now let's talk about our hair. Our hair. I mentioned how as we get older, our hair starts thinning. My husband is bald. I read that men who are bald smile a lot. That's why they're bald. So ladies, I don't know about you. I'd rather have a bald man that smiles a lot than a grouch with a big wad of hair. No offense, you got beautiful hair. But my husband takes a shower after I do, and the drain, and he picks out the hair and he says, by the way, honey, this is not mine. I said, I realize that. I'm losing my hair. We get older. That's what happens. That's what happens. Well, let's talk about our eyes. Now, the eyes. When Marco Polo found the Chinese in the 1300s, he was in shock because they were able to see. Now, the Chinese were the first people to make eyeglasses. What they would do is they would find sand and they would grind it and make a lens that magnified. And of course, we know the Chinese for other things, like if you were to turn over a teacup, what does it say? Made in China. What else do we know the Chinese for? Teas, spices, COVID, but we won't go there. Now, Ben Franklin, he was the very first person in the world to wear bifocals. We'll talk about Ben Franklin later in my talk. But Ben Franklin was the very first person to wear bifocals. Well, now let's talk about our faces. Our faces. You can change the way your face looks in an instant if you have a lot of money. Because you can do this, this, this. You can do all kinds of stuff. If you got a lot of money, change your face the way it looks. Now, when I think about faces, I'm reminded of two people. The first person is my grandmother, my mother's mother. I called her Granny Brau, B-R-A-U, German, 4'11", hair down to here, wore little braids. And you know how kids are. When I was 8 years old, kids don't have a filter. They're going to tell the truth. So when I was 8 years old, I remember going up to my grandmother and said, Granny, why are you so wrinkled? And my grandmother said, honey, I want you to know that wrinkles denote character. In fact, last week, I went to my 60th high school class reunion. One of my old boyfriends came up to me and said, Amy, that was her name, Amy, why are you so wrinkled? Susie over there hardly has any wrinkles. My grandmother told her old boyfriend that wrinkles denote character, and Susie never had any character. But then she went on to tell me this, because I asked my grandmother, I said, Granny, why are you always so happy? What is your secret to happiness? She said, I'll tell you the secret to happiness. And I've done this every day since I had that conversation when I was 8 years old. I'm 67 right now, and I do this every morning because she said this is the secret to happiness. So if you want to be happy, I'm encouraging all of you to do this starting tomorrow morning because this is what she said. I wake up, I look up into the ceiling, I thank the good Lord for another day of life. I go into the bathroom, I strip down stark naked, I look at myself in the mirror, and I say, hi, cutie. And then I count my wrinkles. Because the more wrinkles you have, the more character you have. So tomorrow morning, I hope you wake up and look at the ceiling and thank the Lord for another day of life. Go into the bathroom, strip down stark naked, and say hi, cutie, to yourself. Because that'll make you happy. That's the secret to happiness. Now let me tell you somebody else I think about when I think of faces. How many of you ever watched the television show Sanford and Son? Yep. Fred Sanford had a love-hate relationship with his Aunt Esther. Aunt Esther was always hitting Fred on the head with her purse. I remember one episode where Fred goes up to his Aunt Esther and says, Esther, why are you so ugly? And Esther said, why, Fred, I want you to know I have what's called inner beauty. And Fred says, well, if you have so much inner beauty, why don't you just put your liver on your face? So there you go. Faces. Well, let's talk about our teeth. Now, I read that the way your teeth are, it's inherited. My mother has great teeth. She hardly ever had to go to the dentist. No cavities. My brother has great teeth. No cavities. My dad always going to the dentist, had rotten teeth. I inherited rotten teeth. So that's the way it is. But George Washington had 2 sets of teeth. One of them, if we were to go to the Smithsonian Institute right now, you would see on a pedestal George Washington's wooden teeth. He had wooden teeth. Now, he also had his dentist make him a set of teeth out of fox teeth. Can you imagine how painful those had to be? Because, fox teeth are pointed. Can't you just see Martha and George in their parlor, and Martha says, "Quick, George, go put in your teeth." And I guess he had to make a decision which ones he wanted to put in. I would put in the wooden before I'd put in the fox teeth. Now, speaking of teeth, my mother and I had a very, very close friend by the name of Virgie Meredith. We met Virgie when she was 90, and we continued to go to parties with her. She would go to the musicals. We just had a wonderful time with Virgie. She was very active. When she turned 100 years old, she called my mother, and she says, "Rosemary, I want you and Jill to go to a party with me. They're celebrating my 100th birthday. It's a swimming pool party, 100 years old. And furthermore, I'm going to pick you up, 100 years old." She picks us up. We get to the swimming pool party. Everyone is conversing around the pool, having their hors d'oeuvres and their beverages. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye that Virgie was getting a little too close to the edge of the pool. And I kind of migrated toward her, and next thing I know, she's talking and backs up and falls into the swimming pool. Oh my gosh, you can imagine the reaction of everybody at the party when a 100-year-old lady falls in a swimming pool. Everybody rushes to the edge of the pool. I rush to the edge of the pool. Virgie, are you okay? Are you okay? What's the first thing you thought of as you floated up to the surface? She said, "Honey," I said to myself, "Self, keep your mouth shut so your teeth won't go up before you do." We got her out and all was well. Well, here's a little poem that kind of brings things to a close as far as specifically looking at those 4 things. I'm proud of my bifocals. My dentures fit me fine. My bra gives me an uplift. But oh, how sometimes I miss my mind. Now, I have 3 people who I admire, who continue to percolate in life. The first person, I fell in love with this lady because she has the greatest philosophy in the world. Molly Bailey, the circus queen, as in Barnum and Bailey Circus. The reason I love Molly Bailey is because her philosophy is this: if you're not excited about living, drop dead. I love that. So we got to be excited about living. Now, the other person that I always admired, I loved Eleanor Roosevelt. I loved her. And when I was in high school, my English teacher said, "I want all of you to write a paper about a woman you admire." I was going to write about my mother, but I decided to write about Eleanor Roosevelt. That was in high school. Got to college, Dallas Baptist College, my English teacher said, "We're going to write a paper about women that we admire." So I thought, why reinvent the wheel? I still had the paper from high school. I made an A in high school, I made a B in college. Not sure why, it was the same paper. But the reason I love Eleanor Roosevelt is because she wrote this poem titled "Footprints in Your Heart." Because all of us have had someone in our life that has left a footprint in our heart. And this is what she wrote. "Many people will walk in and out of your life, but only true friends will leave footprints in your heart. To handle yourself, use your head. To handle others, use your heart. Anger is only 1 letter short of the word danger. If someone betrays you once, it's his fault. If he betrays you twice, it's your fault. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. But small minds discuss people. He who loses money loses much. He who loses a friend loses much more. But he who loses faith loses all. Beautiful young people are accidents of nature, but beautiful old people are works of art. Learn from the mistakes of others. You can't live long enough to make them all yourself. Friends, you and me, you brought another friend, and then there were three. We started our group, our circle of friends, and like that circle, there's no beginning and there's no end. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift, and that's why it's called the present. Eleanor Roosevelt. I love that. Footprints in your heart. Now, my third shero. How many of you watched the Beverly Hillbillies? I always loved Granny, Irene Ryan. Now, when Irene Ryan was 77 years old, she appeared on Broadway in the musical Pippin. Pippin. And Pippin is a little boy. Pippin is also trying to find the secret to happiness. Now, Pippin's father is King Charlemagne. So he goes to his father. Father, what do you feel like is the secret to happiness? And what would King Charlemagne say but war? War, that's the secret to happiness. And Pippin says, no, war is not a happy thing. He goes to his girlfriend. His girlfriend says, I'll tell you what's happiness. Love. Love. Well, yes, I love you, you love me, but that's not the total package of happiness. So guess what? He goes to his grandmother. Grandmother, what do you feel like is the secret to happiness? And this is what she says. When you are as old as I, my dear, and I hope that you never are, you will woefully wonder why, my dear, through your cataracts and catarrh. You could squander away or sequester a drop of a precious year. But when your best days are yester, the rest are twice as dear. What good is a field on a fine summer night when you sit all alone in the weeds? Or a succulent pear with each juicy bite you spit out your teeth with the seeds. Before it's too late, stop trying to wait for fortune and fame you're secure of. For there's only one thing to be sure of, mate. There's nothing to be sure of. There's nothing. Here's a secret I've never told. Maybe you'll understand why. I believe if I refuse to grow old, I can stay young until I die. Now, I've known fears for 66 years, and I've had troubles by the score. But the only thing I'd trade them for is 67 more. And she sings this song, oh, it's time to start living, time to take a little from the world we're given, time to take time, 'cause spring will turn to fall in just no time at all. Now, Irene Ryan's last production of Pippin on Broadway. She got into her cab, 77 years young, got into her cab. Her usual cab driver was to take her to her condo in New York City. And guess what? She dropped dead in the cab. But think about it. She was doing exactly what she wanted to do in life. Now, what I want to do is be a speaker and an entertainer. I hope that I'm before an audience and I'll say, and now for my final thought, boom, drop dead. But I didn't know what to do. So that's okay, as long as I was happy. Well, now we're going to talk about some different groupings of people who continue to percolate. Now we're going to talk about some famous artists. First one, Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso. When he was 90 years old, he was on the cover of the National Geographic. And in the background was one of his paintings called Guernica. Guernica. Now, Pablo Picasso's parents encouraged him to be an artist later in life. Later. He was a stage designer, he was a Spanish sculptor, but he decided to be a painter and became famous. But after the outbreak of World War I, guess what? He became broke. So he started hanging out with the rich, like Igor Stravinsky. He painted a picture of Igor Stravinsky that sold for $32,000. Then he painted a picture of his wife that sold for $32 million. She was 22, he was 72, but he continued to percolate. Later, after he did, his famous painting, which was in the background of that front page cover of National Geographic, it's the picture called Guernica, because he started making these geometric shapes. And Guernica is just a bunch of straight lines. And of course, it's a famous painting that he made famous. So, Pablo Picasso. Now, the next famous artist, Grandma Moses. She started working at the age of 12 as a maid. But her parents encouraged her to be an artist. Now, she was a folk artist. And she had a passion for Currier and Ives. She'd make these prints, Prints, prints of maybe the first winter snow, the oncoming of spring, Thanksgiving preparations, Christmas dinner. And she was known as one of the most successful painters in her later years of life. And on her 100th birthday, Nelson Rockefeller declared that day